Hi, everybody. Welcome back to my table. My name is Robert, part of the Legends of Nirvana, and doing the second part of our week of gaming with my cousin Chris.
Week of Geek.
That's a great name, Week of Geek, and this is Week of Geek Part 2. And so the next game we're going to talk about is called, it's either Euthia, I'm not for sure, but it's this huge big box. It's pretty epic in scope and scale. It's got some beautiful stuff to it, which we'll talk about. But I guess you can call it a role-playing game in a box. We'll talk about what we think of it, obviously. But, I mean, I can't think of a better way to describe it, though. You play as a character. You're going through some terrain and killing monsters, leveling up, and stuff like that. So before we get started really getting into details, make sure you hit that subscribe button and hit the like button so that you'll be notified the next time we do some videos. And again, we're doing Euthia. The first thing we always talk about is components. I think components is really where this version really shines. I think it's the best part of the game. But this is the Kickstarter, and it's the Legendary Tier 2 pledge. So basically I went all in on this game. And so it's component wise, gorgeous. And we'll be able to compare, I think, some of the, like, what would you call the retail version versus the Kickstarter version. But I mean, first and foremost, the miniatures are just they're washed. So they're not painted per se, but they do have a wash. And so but they look absolutely gorgeous. I think they're good sculpts, good detail. They're in good shape. They're good size. They're a little bit bigger than like a standard like Games Workshop mini or something like that. So I think that, and they just look super cool.
If you are a miniature painter like me and you really like to paint the minis, if they have the option of just getting them without anything on them, I would certainly go for that option, because these beg to be painted. I mean, they've got vivid detail, and they're probably about a 42 millimeter on the dwarf, and I guess maybe closer to 60 millimeters on the bigger statues. That one, I mean, bigger miniatures, that one's probably closer to 64 millimeters. But gorgeous sculpts, and they beg to be painted. And if you get them sun-dropped, where they've been shaded and dipped and then glazed, it would be kind of hard to paint over the top of that and have it stick with any decency. And then you'd have to prime, and you're going to lose some of the detail. So
I'm just learning to paint, so I think these look really good. So I'm glad I got them washed like this, because I think they still look good, and they're certainly presentable to be play on the board. So yeah, it's a really cool stone monster looking thing.
An Earth Elemental, yeah.
Earth Elemental, and then we got a dragon. And I think the dragon looks gorgeous. I think they fly a little differently than that. Not quite.
They make whip sounds.
Do they?
I think so.
But do they actually say whip, 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 or do the wings make the sound?
I don't know.
Oh,
I've never had a conversation with a dragon.
I've never met a dragon. We also actually have elemental minis as well. I think there's 6 of each kind that I got. Again, they're washed, but they're colored. So like the fire elemental is red with a dark wash, and the stone is gray with a stone wash, stuff like that. So really cool looking minis. Comes with really cool looking coins. The metal coins are really nice. You got different denominations. You got a 20, a 2, and a 5. So that's a 5, the silver, and the 2 looks like a penny. The retail version is cardboard, so just kind of standard cardboard coin flair. Your components for dice, you do have 2 dice per player. So your standard dice are just pretty much plastic dice, but the different version is these really cool looking dice. And then there's a huge white die that retail, or the same type of really pattern, really cool looking die. And then, you know, of all these super cool looking die, you get one black die that is specific to his character that we really didn't get to utilize a whole lot because we didn't understand it and work with it well, is this die. And so it's stickered. You know, you get all this cool stuff, and then I get one die that you gotta get stickers on. I mean, come on. I mean, if they were going to make a part of the game, do it the right way the rest. But That's really my only complaint of the components. I mean, there's a ton of cardboard, but the cardboard's good quality. You got these really awesome organizers that help organize the different tiles that come in the game, and there's quite a few of those. So that's really cool. I mean, it's really, as far as components, I'm surprised they didn't really rank it a little bit higher. Honestly, I think this is like closer to an 8.5 because the minis, the coins. But again, this is just the deluxe, basically the deluxe version. The retail version just has cardboard standees, regular looking dice, and cardboard coins. So my positives, trays were really nice to have. The Kickstarter version did come with sleeves. I do highly recommend that because the cards themselves are not textured, do not linen finish. And then the other bonus for the trays is each player has their own tray. So then it keeps all their specific stuff for their character organized. So I actually going to change mine. I'm going to go from 7.5 to 8.5 because component-wise, it's really nice. What do you got?
I gave it a 7. And again, that's because for me, even on these beautiful boards that do have a linen finish on this part, the edges are all exposed and open. And, you know, if you live in an area with high humidity, if you live in an area like if you have it in the basement where there's a lot of moisture, perhaps, that might be there, those things, if left out, are going to wobble after time.
In my copy, they're already bowed. And so
they ship. He pulled them out and they were like this.
Yeah,
so.
I literally opened it first time when we played this game. So I was taking all the shrink wrap off of it and organized it, and the boards were bowed, which leads to one of the negatives for you as far as...
I believe in table chaos.
Yes.
Meaning that I have a belly, I have legs, and I'm a little clumsy. I have cats.
And children.
Any one of those factors hits, your pieces are all over the place.
Yeah.
And because they're not recessed on the board, you have no idea. You're going to spend 10 minutes just trying to figure out where everything went.
Yeah,
that's any component.
Yeah, this could have been a 10 easily if they would have had recessed boards. I think that I agree. The recessed boards, and that would have been okay with the board bowing a little bit if the boards were recessed.
Right.
Or dual layer, triple layer, however you want to call it. But by them not being double layered or recessed boards, I mean, he is right. I mean, just a slight shift of the table, tiles and your board and everything on it's just going to go flying.
Well, even the map creation as you adventure is made out of tiles that are very reminiscent of kind of Catan, if you're familiar with it, but they don't interlink or lock in any fashion, which means we were constantly, as we were adding things, it would shift and move and you'd have to put them back together. Also, table real estate. We're playing
This is a big game.
Yeah, we're playing on like a 6-foot table, and it used every ounce of this table.
I mean, it looks like a hot mess with me spread out in front of you, and this isn't everything.
Yeah.
There's still about maybe a third of this amount still in the box.
Because those counters I pointed to the map, which unfortunately are kind of off camera, they spread out, and it grows. Because every time you land on a space, you have to put a series of hexagons around your character that represent the new lands you can see from your new viewpoint.
So they look like this, like Chris showed. But what happens is we'll talk about how they come out in gameplay. But you're absolutely right, though. This is a real estate hog. It will steal all the space off your table. You have to have a big table, or you have to have lots of side tables to where you can put maybe your market board on a separate table, your the adventure path, whatever this board was called, on a separate table, or maybe these two combined on the table. But really, once you get into the game, especially, and this is just 2-player, I can imagine how much bigger this map would have got if you do a 4-player game. It'd have been gigantic.
Right.
And so he's absolutely right. It's a table hog. So prepare for that if you are interested in the game. So, all right. So that's our comments for components. Now we'll move on to theme. So theme, extremely generic fantasy. I mean, there's really nothing unique about these characters, about the monsters, about really anything about them. Just standard fantasy trope that you can find in any role-playing game book, pretty much.
Yeah, and it's kind of a shame because for so much effort they put in the miniatures and some of the artwork, I was really expecting a more pervasive theme that gave me an idea of what this wonderful world was. And like, I couldn't even tell you what the only Torment of Resurrection I can think of is, it'll be discussed later.
Yeah.
Why it's tormenting, but
I mean, as far as theme, all you get is really, you get this sheet per character. And so, but all it does is it talks about the tiles that you unlock during gameplay. And so, I mean, that's the extent of it. Other than that, we have you got a couple different books. So you got, of course, you got elemental scenarios, which we didn't attempt that. So that might add something. We don't know. I don't think so.
I bet it is elementals.
I think so.
Yeah.
You got this huge sheet for achievements. So, I mean, I guess that does add something to it if you're trying to go for specific things. So, but I don't think that's really a theme thing. Then you got the scenario book and a rule book in the appendix. So the scenario book, it gives you very little flavor.
Absolutely.
For that scenario that you're in. I mean, now granted, we played just the first one called the Hunt, but and that's 1 page, and then it gives you the length of time, should take 30 minutes, and it will and it tells you how to set up your board and all that stuff and tiles. And then you go into imminent threat, which is what we didn't do. Again, the same thing, but still not a whole lot of story, not a lot of flavor. Talks about setting it up and all kinds of stuff to play the game. That's it. So really, I mean, there's a theme. It's just very pasted on.
I mean, I think it's fair to say after playing Role Player Adventures, where there was so much theme and so much story, to go to this, which was meant to be a role-playing game in a box, and have none of that almost, be very transparent was kind of a letdown.
Yeah.
And I think that may have flavored the score we ended up giving, because we expected more. Particularly, I mean, you could beat someone with this box as home defense.
Right.
And so I was fully expecting there to be more into it than what it was.
Yeah, I agree. And then and I apologize up front, but normally we start out with some basic information. We'll cover that at the end of our review. So we'll talk about when it came out and rankings and all that. So I mean, we're pretty much on the same page with the theme. It's just very generic, just a little bit better than Catan. So that's why I'm giving it a 5.5.
And I gave it a 5 because I just felt like it met the standard. There was just enough theme to say, hey, this is a fantasy game, and I knew I was playing in a fantasy world. That's about it.
The reason why I did rank it a little bit above is because I did give it a half bonus point for the artwork. The artwork is really nice. All right, so now we go into the rule book. The rule book had a lot to be desired. I scored it a 6 because it was quite confusing trying to read it.
As did I.
I don't know if maybe something was lost in translation. I'm not for sure on that, but there just wasn't enough examples, not enough. Even though there was an appendix, we had to resort to the appendix quite a bit to try and clarify different things. But the cheat sheets, you are given a cheat sheet, and they do work, but there's like 3 of them, and they're pretty small, so you're constantly having to flip the cheat sheet to try and remember where you need to, what you're doing and what you need to do, and it will remind that. So the cheat sheets, although they function, they're a little tough to use.
Yeah, well, there's not any real depth on the cheat sheet. So while they might say this icon means this, some of those icons are referring to abilities or things you do, and they give you nothing to look at. So as far as a cheat sheet, and I think part of the reason it got such a low score for me is anytime you have to go to YouTube over the rule book that comes with the game to figure out how to play it, which we did with this game, to me that's a problem, because that means somebody else had to sit there and puzzle out the rules. And, and in one of the YouTube videos we watched, well, I think the main one, the guy even made the comment, I heard him make the comment that he had to seek clarification from the creators. So to me, that's a mistake. If there's that much that they have to keep going to the creators constantly to figure out what something is, that tells you right off the bat your rulebook just was not robust enough to do what the game is trying to do. And that can happen. I mean, creators make a game and they know how it works.
Right.
And so it's like a slip of the mind that they don't put something in there.
Yeah. So 6 for rulebook. And so now we're going on to gameplay. So we both ranked this as 7. Overall, it was okay. I mean, I don't know how much I'll actually get this to the table, though, because it's such a table hog. And it's just really, I mean, I guess it's just a game that, because it doesn't have the story, it's a game that where you want to do combat and you want to try and improve your loot. And so that's really all you're doing. Can you do that elsewhere and have more fun? Absolutely. And so that's, I'm not ready to sell it. I'm not ready to give up on it yet. But my initial gameplay, and again, all of our reviews are that initial gameplay. My opinion of the initial gameplay was just okay. There's nothing to brag about. So my positives include that the action tokens that you do unlock through the course of the game. So basically, whenever you do certain actions, you gain favor. And so then when you go up this favor board, it locks the possibility of unlocking specific tiles that are for your character that come onto your board. And so some you can get for free, but then there's additional cost to unlock others, and your character sheet will show that. So this is where your abilities are. And so for me, my first 3 were free, and then I would have to spend 4, 5, 6, and 7 to unlock the other 4 to be able to do more abilities. And then and then I can replace them at will as well. So if I don't want to unlock any of them for that coin, and then I can only equip 3, I could just switch out as I unlock more options. So that part I did like. I liked all the variety that you got with your character. And a lot of them, you might have 2 for that level that you unlocked, and you pick 1, and then you discard the other. And so I like that, because then you actually have to kind of strategize on character development. And I do like that part of it. Any comments on that?
Well, for me at least, well, I'll be the first one to admit I'm much more of a role player than a board gamer. But, you know, when I analyze systems and role playing and stuff, I look to see how much minutia is there. How many small little things have to be remembered in order to do something. And this game had many different unique aspects that might be triggered or one-offs that you really had to keep track of. So you might be keeping track of 9 things at the same time for your action or your turn of what you're doing. And different elements are going to interplay. And while I understand that is, typical of this kind of higher level game, it was just a lot to try and keep track of. So I would certainly not recommend this to a novice or somebody who's trying to bring somebody who's new to board games in, because you're going to blow their mind out and they're going to be sitting there in a brain fog for half the session.
That's a good point.
I also would say, as to be expected, the dwarf was massively overpowered. His shield just was the biggest difference between Robert and I was taking damage from not taking damage from protection and stuff all the time, whereas Robert was just getting his butt handed to him.
Right.
And the dwarf really felt overpowered. I don't know about the other characters because we didn't get into them, but I can definitely say, while I love my dwarves, at the same time, I have to admit, it felt a little like I was on cheat mode.
Yeah. I mean, even though I actually I could do more damage than he could.
Definitely.
It's still, because of that, it's still random. So I'm terrible at dice games. So when I roll my dice, I wasn't dealing the maximum amount of damage that I could do consistently. I was generally doing half or less than half the amount of damage that I could do. So I wasn't killing the monster outright or within the first round, which means that then they get a chance to attack me, which means I'm getting damage. Whereas he was getting enough defense where he could take a couple rounds to get to the monster and be able to defeat him before it did anything to him. And so I do agree the dwarf was overpowered for startup. And that's not to say that some of my abilities that I could have unlocked would have made me just as much of a beefcake and be able to attack or defend myself or stuff that you could find in the marketplace. But again, very random. So a lot of the marketplace stuff that we found wasn't even equipment that you could really be able to mitigate damage. It was just either extra damage that you could do or as potions or stuff like that.
Well, and now that I'm really thinking about this and hearing your words, and I kind of putting the pieces together, this is not really a cooperative game.
No, not really.
It's a competitive game. So the idea that one character is the tank and is kind of protecting the other characters really doesn't fly here either.
No.
So, I mean, I do like the fact that every character is so dramatically different in what they can do, but that role of damage mitigation, it's kind of pointless. Because, he's absolutely right. He did do more damage than me, but he also got to experience the resurrection, too. So, the Torment of Resurrection.
Right.
And it was tormenting.
So, I think that some other thoughts that we had, other than that ability to, or maybe you want to do a better job of going up against monsters or being to do a better build for your character, there wasn't a whole lot of replay value. Because again, the story part of it, there wasn't really anything that said, oh, all right, now you did the hunt. Now, because of all this cool stuff that you did, now it leads into this part. And this is why you want to go here. They didn't connect at all. And so it's just, here's another couple sentences of flavor and off you go. And so now you make your map, you go attack, hopefully you win, and then you're done.
Yeah, really.
I mean, right?
And I'll be honest, when we were done, the first thought in my mind is, I really don't want to play this game again. You know, and again, that could be because, unlike Robert, I'm not as big into the resource management,
right,
long-term, lots of strategy moving parts. So I guess the thing to take from me on this is, if you're a casual board gamer, buyer beware.
But there's definitely some Euro elements, and basically just the game and the way you play it is that you have your scenario, and your scenario will tell you how to build a stack of tiles for where you're exploring in this world. And you got 3 different types of tiles that'll tell you that you'll want to stack. And then once you get those 3 different types of tiles and all the types you're supposed to get, then you flip them over and there's a 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 on the back. And this first one, we just did 1 through 3. So then you take all the 1s and you shuffle them. And then you take all the 2s and you shuffle them. And you take all the 3s and you shuffle them. 3's on the bottom, 2's in the middle, 1's on top. And so then as you're on your tile, when you come to a space where there's an unexplored space next to your hex, you got to surround all those unexplored hexes with new tiles. So where basically your figure is now surrounded by tile. And it's going to reveal quite a few different things. It's going to reveal monster locations. It can reveal a market location or an alchemist location. It's got all these, pretty cool spots that you can be able to go to. But then you go there, and if you get into a monster battle, basically it depends on what level it is, 1, 2, or 3. And so if it's a particular type of monster, this is a level 2 because it's got 2 swords going through the wolf head. Then you flip it at the front side will tell you the reward for defeating it, and then you flip it over, and then it's going to tell you what you have to roll to deal damage. Well, your character tells you what roll to deal damage, but then this will tell you what it gets to roll to deal damage. He gets to play as the monster, and that's what it's called in the book. He's the monster player. I'm the active player. And so he will roll as the monster, and if he rolls a certain number, it deals a certain amount of damage. He rolls above that, he gets to do more damage. It's got a certain amount of health. If I can do more damage before he does damage to me, that monster's dead. You flip it over, you get that reward. A lot of times the tile that you're standing on will give you a reward as well. So you get that on top of it. And so, there's the possibility of being able to really get some cool stuff. We didn't unlock a whole lot of cool stuff.
Not in the first
And
scenario.
so it really, that might be just bad luck, bad randomness, I don't know. But we didn't get to see a whole lot of cool stuff. But there looks like there is some cool stuff that you can unlock. But, on top of that, the interesting part of the combat is that they can, as the monster player, he can definitely screw you over. And so when you first reveal a monster, it's got some stats on here. And so it's going to tell you a specific token, how many tokens you get, and then how many type of cards you get to draw. And you got 2 types of cards that you can draw, these silver fists and these gold fists. And so you play these cards again as the monster player. So when it's not my turn, I have a handful of cards I don't do anything with. But when he gets attacked, I'm now the monster player. I can play these. And then if I get one of those chaos tokens, then I can then do the actions on here. So I might be able to do this card that's called Power Strike. So I play that chaos token against him. My monster will do 2 more damage, and it will reduce his rolls by 2. So it could really, it makes the combat almost too swingy.
Well, it's, you've already got the fact that luck is a factor. You're rolling dice. So you have the chaos of luck added in the game. On top of that, now scores can be modified so that, you roll a 6, now it's a 4.
Right.
And yes, you have factors to add and subtract. And again, if simple math is hard for you, this game may not be for you. Right. Because there's a lot of add and subtract. Nothing, I don't think it ever even gets into double digits, at least not in our game.
We didn't see that.
But again, when I was talking about all those different factors, you might have 3 pluses coming from different things and 2 minuses coming from different things. And you got to take that all into account with the randomness on dice on top of it. So the strategy part kind of gets watered down in that aspect that you're still reliant so much on luck.
And you also get a certain amount of tokens. And those tokens you can actually turn in. If you're the one fighting, you can turn in to reroll 1 die, add 2. And if I'm the monster, I can do the same thing. I can turn in 1 token, reroll a die, and reduce his by 2. So, I mean, again, a little bit of strategy when you use those tokens. And these tokens are hard to get back, so you don't get them back immediately.
Right.
And so, again, risk versus reward. Do I use it now or do I save it for later? But a lot of luck. I'm not against that. I mean, RPGs is all about luck.
Absolutely.
So I get that. But it just, because of the lack of story and maybe because of the lack of...
Well, and the fact, again...
of the feel of going into combat, you don't get that feeling that... when I was successful, I didn't go, yes, that was awesome.
Right.
And then... but
there's no sense of victory.
Yeah,
really.
But it did suck when I lost, though. It hurt.
Well, and he mentioned the monster player thing. The monster player switches depending upon which player is the hero at the time.
So active player versus monster player.
Right. And so it does change, but that's where that heavy competitiveness of this game comes in, because, again, you're trying to still earn victory points. That's what this tracker, on top of unlocking certain abilities, it's also a form of tracking your victory points. And that's where that comes into play. The screw your neighbor, so to speak, comes in action is if you're the monster player, you're trying to make the other player lose. And so really just...
It could be very brutal.
Oh, absolutely.
It can be very brutal. So there is a way to play this co-op, though. And so we didn't try that. And I didn't play the solo.
I don't like them enough for co-op.
Yeah. And I didn't play it solo, so I don't know what that's like. It might be a completely different experience solo. And it might be a fun game solo, because then you're not having to worry about someone else trying to screw you over and stuff like that. It's just you versus the monsters.
I don't think I could do it solo, Robert. I think that would be an exercise in sadness.
You think so?
Yeah.
And then the only other thing I didn't really talk about is your actions. So this part I did like too. I mean, I did like, you get 2 sets of tokens and you got basically 3 different actions you can do in a turn. You can do a mining action, you can do a market action, and you can do combat. And so when you move into a space that has a monster, you have to have that combat token available, because you're going to go into combat, and then you have to spend that token when it's your turn to go in to defeat that monster. So in other words, if you had, all of them have movement. And so if you do your movement action, turn in this token, and I don't have that combat available, I can't move into a space that has a monster in it. And then once you do any space that has a market, combat, alchemist, whatever, you basically got to roll a dice to see if you are able to take it over, I guess, control it. And so if you control it, then you put your little marker down. And so anybody else can go in that, but if it's like a market space, I have to pay him a coin if he controls it, so that then I can go to that market, or vice versa, he'd have to pay me. And so, or do the mining action. But then once the mining is done, then there's 2 tokens on there. Nobody can mine that space anymore. And so that's, I spent a lot of time on mining, and I really shouldn't have, because I didn't get a whole lot of,
no, you didn't.
I got a lot of money,
but
I didn't get any good items. And so, maybe I wasn't supposed to. I mean, you're mining for gems, and the gems, that's one of the Euro aspects, is that you can use the different gems to be able to purchase other things and other upgrades throughout the game. So I think it goes back to your point. There's just a lot of moving pieces.
There is.
And so I'm fine with lots of moving pieces. I love a good deep Euro game with complex Euro game. But, the better ones, the polished ones, it all makes sense. You do this to do that, and it works well together.
That's really what was lacking.
This didn't really work well together. Yeah. So I think that
polish on the Polish game.
I think a 7 is still a good score, though. So even though I didn't have the best of times, it's still just an initial review. I don't want to give it any worse until I play it a couple more times to really sink my teeth into it to determine, is this a game worth keeping and really digging, or is this just really a game about exploring, killing monsters, gaining loot, but really no story? And if there's really no story, I don't know if I can keep playing it.
I got no motivation for me.
Yeah.
I mean, if we're playing a game that's supposed to have a narrative edge to it, I want that edge. I want that to be in there.
Right.
I want to see it, and it just wasn't. It was non-existent for me.
Yeah, and then maybe if it was more of a Euro and really felt like a Euro, then maybe that lack of narrative edge would have been fine.
Right.
Because, you don't have that in a good Euro. But
they weren't selling that.
Kind of an in-between type of game. And it's supposed to give you the feelings of old JRPG type games. And it didn't have that.
Yeah, I didn't get any JRPG vibe at all. Nothing like another game we're going to be talking about later that certainly was oozing it.
Right.
This had nothing. It felt like, if I'm being Game of Thrones that had a dwarf added in. I mean, I think maybe one of the characters is an elf. We couldn't determine if any of them were from looking at the cards.
Right. Because they have hoods on. You can't really tell.
Their hoods or their hairs covering their ears.
So, any other thoughts before I go into the other stuff that I accidentally skipped at the beginning?
Nope. I just want to hear you pronounce these names.
All right. So, again, obligatory apologies. This game did come from Poland, I believe, and these names are difficult for me to try to pronounce. So, I apologize up front. But this game did come out this year. I just got it a few weeks ago in the mail via Kickstarter. It's not available for retail yet, but I have seen it online for sale. Overall rank is 2,369 with a rating of 9. So a lot of people love this game. So we are very much in the minority so far. It was designed by, Marketa Blahova. Tadeus Spousta, art by Iveta Dalazulova, Jen Dvorsky. I think I got that one all right.
I think you did. That one sounded okay.
And then Petstrick. That's all I got. It plays 1 to 4. It is published by Dia Games. Again, not out for retail. I paid, I believe it was $188 for my Kickstarter. And so that's without shipping. I did go online to try and see if anyone was selling their version. I saw one version as low as $119. I saw another version all the way up to $350.
Wow.
And so I would hope the $350 one is the deluxe one, because I couldn't imagine spending that much money for this game if it wasn't retail. I mean, if it wasn't the deluxe version. If I didn't get these minis and spent $300, I'd be mad.
Oh yeah.
So
the other thought I had on the minis is, wouldn't it have been nice if they did that for the monsters too?
Well, I mean, they did for the elementals.
Yeah, I know they did for the
those
elementals.
2 monsters.
But I mean, the other stuff that's.
But all the others are card based, so we don't have minis for them.
Sadness.
It's all right. Not a big deal.
Minis are awesome.
But again, the art's fine, so I did like that. But that's what we thought of Euthia. It's okay. It was an okay game.
It was an okay. Yeah. Lukewarm.
Yeah. So, all right. Well, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and the like button so that you can see more videos as we make them and get them out. We still got a few more to go over ourselves for our Geek Week series of games. So we'll see you in a few with our next game. Bye.